A flight attendant removed her stockings in front of all passengers. She did this because the aircraft's landing gear had malfunctioned, forcing an emergency landing. Removing the stockings was to prevent skin burns in case of fire. Additionally, all sharp objects including earrings and jewelry had to be removed. At this moment, the aircraft only had enough fuel for about 10 more minutes of flight. The ground fire department had just arrived at the airport runway. Even if they sprayed foam at maximum speed, it would be nearly impossible to cover the entire 5-kilometer runway in just 10 minutes. The fire chief immediately decided to spray foam only in the most critical areas. Meanwhile, hundreds of armed police officers and medical personnel had all rushed to the scene. When passengers learned of the emergency landing, everyone became frightened. Some people screamed hysterically on the plane, while others wrote what they believed would be their final letters. This was a real incident that occurred on September 10, 1998. An MD-11 passenger aircraft flying from Shanghai Hongqiao to Beijing, carrying 137 passengers, took off normally as usual. However, shortly after takeoff, the captain inadvertently noticed that the nose landing gear warning light, which should have been off, remained illuminated. He asked technical personnel to check whether the aircraft had any malfunctions. After inspection, they discovered that the aircraft's nose landing gear could not be lowered, which meant the plane could not land normally. Realizing the severity of the situation, the captain immediately sent a distress call to ground control. The tower quickly received the message, cleared the runway, and requested the aircraft to return immediately. Ground personnel also observed that the aircraft's landing gear could not open normally, meaning that even returning would not allow for a normal landing. After discussion, the command center decided to have the aircraft descend from altitude and rapidly climb when 30 meters from the ground. This would create a counterforce that might shake the landing gear loose. As the altitude gradually dropped to the predetermined height, the captain pulled hard on the control stick. The altitude instantly soared to several thousand meters. The massive turbulence caused passenger panic, but after completing this maneuver, that deadly red light remained on. Ground control then provided a new solution. Make sharp turns at 300 knots to shake the landing gear loose. The severe turbulence caused passengers to vomit, but even so, the button in the cockpit still did not reset. The ground command team realized the severity of the problem. Armed police units, fire trucks, and ambulance teams were all deployed, preparing for the worst-case scenario. The commander had one last option: have the aircraft land tail first. At the moment the rear landing gear touched the ground, it would climb rapidly again. This would use vibration and counterforce to force the landing gear down. The captain called the chief flight attendant and asked her to do everything possible to calm passengers and move all passengers to the rear cabin. If this operation failed, sparks would fly the moment the nose gear touched the ground, and the cockpit and front cabin would be the first areas to receive impact. When passengers heard they needed to relocate, they immediately panicked and rushed toward the rear cabin. Flight attendants came to the rear cabin to teach passengers the crash position. Spread legs apart, cross arms, and bury the head between the arms. This would minimize impact damage. The aircraft's altitude had dropped to 300 meters and was about to make contact with the ground.